Well, good morning again, everyone. That was a little bit of a tough sequence hymn, evidently. We had a hard time with that one, didn't we? Maybe we'll get that one next time. Everything's not okay. I was at a meeting not long ago with a few clergy and a bunch of other people, and a friend of mine, she was a clergy person, and I knew she was going through a very hard time. And the meeting was going real well. Everyone had had their cup of joe, in the morning. We were all sort of cheerful and really, going at it. Everyone was hocked up on caffeine. But my friend, she was going through, in her personal life, she was suffering a personal injury. She just had death from a family member. And there was another crisis in another family member's life. And she was heavily burdened. And in the middle of our meeting, she cracked. She interrupted and said, and I wrote this down because it struck me. She said, "You know what? I'm tired of the church acting like everything's okay. The church sometimes needs to just admit it, that everything's not okay. We can't act like it is. We need to tell people the truth, that everything is not okay." Of course, this stunned our meeting to a guilty silence. Because in a way, she was right. And perhaps it's just time for us to admit it. You know it and I know it. Everything's not okay. That she had problems. Real problems. And I'll tell you, sometimes I have troubles too. Real ones. You have troubles too, don't you? Everything's not okay. We have troubles. Anyone here doesn't have troubles? Anyone want to raise their hand? Anyone brave enough? No, you're not brave enough. Good. We have troubles. We are worried about our teenagers. We worry about the cancers in our bodies, cancers in the lives, in the bodies of those we love. Personal financial troubles. Marital troubles, which sometimes are the same thing. Lord knows it's difficult to be married. We have troubles, suffer from anxiety and depression. We're lonely. We're full of grief for those loved ones we miss and we've lost. We don't feel loved, and actually, at some level, we don't feel worthy to be loved, not just the way we are. We've got troubles. Sometimes they keep us up at night. John the Baptist, who forever from now on, many of us will see as Reverend Dick Schmidt. Anybody with me? He was here last week, gave us a great vision of John the Baptist. John the Baptist in our reading today, he's got troubles. He's got the prison sort of troubles. He's been in the clink for some time, you would say. And at first, we know that John was certain that everything was all right. Jesus was going to fix it. Everything was all right. If you remember the story before John is in prison, you remember the story when Jesus came to John to be baptized, and Jesus was like, "Here's the Lamb of God, the Messiah himself." I mean, he was certain, "I can't baptize you, Jesus. You need to baptize me." Do you remember that? But then, his time in prison just kept going on. His troubles just wouldn't go away. And John started thinking, man, maybe everything's not okay. Maybe I just got to admit it. Everything is not okay. So he sends his men to Jesus and he says, "Are you the Messiah or not? Are you the one that we've been waiting on to come and to help us with our troubles? Or are we to look for someone else or something else?" Like my clergy friend and like us, John had troubles, bad troubles. John's physical prisons started to sink in, and he was feeling the chains of that spiritual captivity. You know what I'm trying to say there. He was. Those kinds that keep you awake. This is John's story. This is our story. We got troubles outside that give us troubles inside and take away our peace and our blessings, the life out of our lives. Many of us here today know this all too well. One day, a while back, I went to a prison on a visit, thankfully. And I was there. I was to visit a successful Christian program that was going on in this prison. It was amazing. But on this day, I walked into the prison on this particular day, to everyone around me, I looked like a young, white, free man of privilege. But in all honesty, I was going through a terrible time in my life. My family and I were. It was just that which I had rarely ever experienced, thankfully. Me and my family, we so much grief, so much real suffering. And as I walked into that prison, therefore, I felt like I was imprisoned myself on the inside. I was held captive. And so they took me from place to place in the facility, and finally they took me to the prison chapel. And when I walked in, all the inmates were in there. They were just about to start worship. It was quite a sight. I mean, this place was not air conditioned. So all these men were really smelly, right? So these giant, rough, tough, you can see it, a crowd of them packed in this little room, and they're all there, and this little man's up front with a microphone. But what I saw isn't what impressed me, it was what I heard. Because right about the time I walked into the chapel that day, that little man with the microphone said, "Sorry, everybody. The band's equipment is broken today, so I'll tell you what, let's just do this. I think a few of us here can relate to this one. Because we got troubles," he said. There was a long pause, and I felt like I was the only one in the room that didn't know what was about to happen. He said, "We got troubles." Then he broke into song. "Troubles in my way." And every one of those big men, all of a sudden they were the chorus. And they chimed back. "Troubles in my way. I have to cry sometimes. I have to cry sometimes. So much trouble, so much trouble. Makes me cry sometimes. Makes me cry sometimes. I lie awake at night. I lie awake at night. But that's alright. 'Cause I know Jesus. He'll fix it after a while." Those men exploded into praise as they repeated this very moving song. "Trouble's in my way. I have to cry sometimes. So much trouble makes me cry sometimes. I lie awake at night. That's all right. Because I know Jesus. He will fix it after a while." I was able to meet with a few of the men after this, and it was just amazing to me that it wasn't just a song, that these men behind these prison walls, things were not okay. Nothing was okay, but they had hope. And this hope that they had set them free from all that was not right. It was the true power of the Bible. It was the true good news of Jesus Christ. And I looked around me on that day, and I knew three things as I reflected upon it. That these men, I knew more clearly than ever that all men and women, people, are created equal before their Maker. I knew that more clearly than that those were the same people that are here. And that all people have problems. We have troubles. And that no matter what your troubles look like to others, your troubles, they're important to you, and they're important, therefore, to your Creator. God cares about your troubles. And the third thing was that those men have something to teach me about freedom, about waiting on God to act, and about patience. I mean, how could they have been so free in there when I could be so imprisoned out here? Advent, the season of Advent we're in now, is the season, of course, leading up to Christmas. This is a season of waiting on God, preparing, waiting on God to act, waiting on God to bring His Messiah, waiting on God to do something. And outside our church traditions, which I love, counting of the weeks with the Advent wreath, outside the niceties of all this, waiting on God to act is not pretty. It is hard. We struggle. Even John the Baptist struggled. And yet it's something each of us and our children really desperately need to learn to do we not? If we're going to actually live a blessed life and a life free, we have to learn to wait on the Lord, because we got troubles. We're going to have troubles. Our epistle today aims to help us with this. If you remember, James says, like the farmer waits for his precious crop to come from the earth, he must wait both on the early rains and the late rains. We too must be patient and let God work things out a little now and a little after a while. We want instant healing and resolution, but that's not the way of our lives. James says we must learn to see our lives and God's actions in it through the lens of patience. Patience, that terrible word, patience. Amy Gross, I found something Amy Gross wrote about this. She said, after years of twisting and burning in the fires of our impatience, after all the suffering that we've caused ourselves through our impatience, haven't we truly come to recognize patience as the supreme medicine for our lives? Apply patience, and frustration goes away. Our outrage cools, and peace is ours. We have troubles. I know some of your troubles. I've only been here 4 months. I'm privileged to know some of your troubles, and I want you to all hear me clearly say that, like my clergy friend and like John the Baptist, it's normal to become impatient with God. It's normal to become impatient with everything in life, and even to wonder if all this talk about Jesus loving us is not just some sort of comforting talk to soothe us as we sink into the abyss. It's normal to even begin to think God is not really even with us at all. But in our hearts, somewhere, in the stillness of your heart, that if you could just see your life a little more broadly, a little more patiently, through that lens we could see the very hand of a loving God, ever present, a Jesus-like God, there beside us in all of our prisons, here beside us today in this Christmas season. And so today, I believe that is what we are reminded and called to do in this worship today. As we kneel in the service, whether it's in your pews or when we come with empty hands to receive communion, let us ask God for His help, with His patience, with our patience. Let's ask Him to gently enable us, Lord. Gently enable us to let You have our troubles. Take them from our hands and put them in Yours. And then fill our hands with a bit more of Your peace, a bit less of our angst. And let me say it for the record one more time. This church, we all know everything's not okay. It's just not. But we also proclaim that's all right. Because Jesus, He will fix it after a while.